Well, you know, I'm the last of 7 kids, and I think there was almost 8 years between myself and my youngest sister. But I was born on Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May, 1946. But if you count back 9 months, I think that was about the time we had victory over Japan. So I'm glad my parents celebrated. I wouldn't be here today, you know. So, but growing up on a ranch, you know, we were taught to be independent. You know, I had a couple of dogs were my best friends. I had chores to do, chores in the morning to do, went to school, came home, did chores in the afternoon, then I studied. And I didn't study very well. And maybe it's because I was fortunate, or I went to a little 1-room schoolhouse, and then later on it became a 4-room schoolhouse. And but it was a rude awakening when I got to college, because I really did not know how to study. And so I jumped into it wholehearted in the school, and was going to finish a 5-year regime in 4 years. And it's kind of like running into that wind shear in the airplane when my hand went through the dash. College was that kind of an experience, but I finally figured it out. But it was a tough road there for a while. And you know, you should be observant. And when I have people work for me, especially young people, I said, you know, within 6 months, if you don't know my job, or you don't know the guy you're working with, shame on you. Because this is an opportunity. You can punch your little time card and work your 8 hours and go home and drink your beer or whatever, and you know, but you won't learn anything. But if you keep your eyes open and look and see how things are done, and that was one of the challenges I had when my business got bigger and bigger, was you would tell an employee how to do something, and you would have a mental idea how you would do it. It would go through his process, and he would come out with something completely different. And I had to bite my lip more than once to sit back and see what happens, because that's how he learns. And sometimes they surprised me. They came up with a better routine that was safer, faster, more efficient, and I was impressed. But you know, you have to keep an open mind. You have to be, I'm not that smart, but I'm a sponge. When I'm around stuff, I got a pretty good memory. I can absorb all that, and you never know when that's going to come back to help you. So shame on you if you ever stop learning. I think the most dangerous person in the world is the one that walks up to you and says, I know everything. Yeah, he knows everything except how to learn. And that's a dangerous person, especially in the cockpit, because he's not willing to learn, he's not willing to pay attention, he's an accident going to happen somewhere. My dad he was born in Sweetwater Valley in 1899. He had the first all-electric home in Chula Vista. He liked electricity. He never finished high school. He had a radio shop, and the only radio shop in Chula Vista, California at the time. And my mom came to work for him as kind of the girl Frowdy and sales girl, and she wound up marrying the boss. But my dad, Lear Radio, Learjet fame is credited, and he invented the Lear radio, as the person responsible for putting a radio in a car. And that part is a true and correct statement. But the problem is, when he started the motor, he couldn't use the radio because the static was terrible and horrible. And so it was fine. They could shut the motor off, look at the stars, look over the city or whatever they were doing, and have radio. But when they started the car, it didn't work. My dad basically invented the little guy that we call a capacitor today, or we put it on for silencing engine noise and static. He invented that gadget, and he sold it to Motorola. And the proceeds from that is what bought the ranch that I grew up on, and a couple of other ranches. And so my dad was always an inventor and a plunker. I grew up with a barn full of machinery. And yeah, he's laughing about that right now. My current little barn is 24,000 feet and has a nice machine shop and has a nice cabinet shop and all that stuff. But, you know, I remember when I was really small, my dad took my mom's vacuum cleaners And we're talking in the 1950s, okay? We're talking 1952, 53. And he built a couple of furnaces. One kind of looked like a kiln, and they were fired by propane, and that was to melt copper in. And the other thing, he had a bigger furnace to heat the mold up, and he'd made a mold to make an armature and an electric motor that would use a lot less copper. It's all steel. And then we poured the copper through it when it was hot enough. Well, I'm told to watch these gauges, so I'm looking at the gauges, and you know, what does a 8-year-old or 7 or 8-year-old kid know, right? The gauges get hot, I turn on more air. So what I did was I melted the mold he'd made up to pour the copper through. So, you know, I thought I was cooling it by turning more air on, but my dad had mixed emotions. He was very proud that he had built a furnace that could melt steel, and my butt was very unproud of the whooping I got for turning the wrong dial. But, you know, that's how you kind of learn from life experiences.